Hi everybody, this is Amy, coming today to talk a little bit about genetics and the reproductive system that you guys are working on already this week. One of the first things I wanted to talk about is just the makeup of the genetic material that we have in all of our body cells. All of our body cells are made up of 46 chromosomes. That's 23 chromosomes from mom and 23 chromosomes from dad. So we end up having 23 pairs total, giving us 2 copies of each of those particular chromosomes. Now, one of the pairs of chromosomes that we're dealing with are our sex chromosomes. And just like with all the other pairs, we're going to have 2 options for these sex chromosomes as well. If we are female, both of the copies are what are called the X chromosome. If we are a male, we have one X and one Y. The rest of the 22 pairs of chromosomes are going to determine all of the other basic proteins that have to be made in the body. It could be anything from hair color to eye color to transport proteins that have to be made in muscle cells and everything else that we have to code for in our body. But the particular pair of chromosomes that we're dealing with in this chapter are the sex chromosomes, the X or the Y. Now, related to that, there also ends up being a condition that you may be familiar with called X-linked traits. And I'm going to show you what that means here. Most of the genetic material that codes for the proteins in our body are found on those 22 pairs of autosomal chromosomes, the ones that aren't related to determining our sex. But there are a few particular genes that are actually found physically on the X chromosome. And because those genes are found on the X chromosome, they end up determining whether those particular conditions get passed on more often to males or to females. And in the case of an X-linked trait, typically you'll see more males with that condition because they only have one copy of the X chromosome. Usually, for a lot of genetic conditions that involve a mutation, you would have to demonstrate 2 recessive copies of the actual mutation in order to have that condition. Now, in the example of these X-linked traits, if you are a female, you could potentially carry one of those mutated copies, but because you have a normal copy to go along with it, you never experience the symptoms or the effects of that condition. So you would simply be referred to as a carrier. If you were a female, in order to actually have the disease, you would have to have 2 copies of that mutated form, which really is going to be pretty unlikely. You would have to have that really from both mom and dad. Now, if you're a male, however, what you'll see in this example is that you would have half a chance, or 50% of that chance, to carry that genetic condition because you only have one copy of the X chromosome. So let me show you what that example would look like. Let's say that mom she's a carrier for this particular disease. So this is my normal dominant, and this is the recessive carrier with this lowercase c. So the mom has 2 X chromosomes, one has the normal gene, and one is a carrier for the mutation. Let's say that the dad has the normal gene. He has one X and then a Y. But if you take a look at this Punnett square, this is what's going to happen. You'd have this option where you have just a normal genetic makeup. Here you would have another female that would be a carrier. This male would have the normal genes, and this male would be experiencing that actual condition. And in this case, we're talking about color blindness. So what you see here is that if you have a dad with a normal copy and you have a mom that's a carrier, all of their daughters would be completely fine. Half of them might be carriers for the condition, but they wouldn't experience it themselves. But 50% of their sons would automatically have this condition because the mom passed down one of those mutated copies to the son, and because a boy is XY, that means that that X chromosome is going to show up. The phenotype or the result of that mutated copy is going to show up for sure. So this is why X-linked traits tend to show up a lot more often in males. Now, does that mean that a female can't have it? Well, no, that's not the case. However, in order for a female to have it, the dad would have to actually have the condition, and the mom would either need to have it, which would be 2 lowercase c's, or she would need to be a carrier. So if the mom was a carrier and the dad had it, then you could get a female that actually had the condition. So this would be a carrier here. This would be a female that actually had the condition. Here would be a male that was normal, and here would be a male that had the condition. So it is possible to get females that have it, but it's not as often, because with a female you've got 2 options of an X chromosome that make it a lot easier just to simply mask what that mutation would be.